Hey guys, Lord Naren White here. The Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. Without further ado, returning to The Invisible Man, as read by Lord Naren White. There was a disturbance behind, and the speaker stopped to step aside for a little procession that was marching very resolutely towards the house. First, Mr. Hall, very red and determined. Then Mr. Bobby Jaffers, the village constable, and then the wary Mr. Wadgers. They had come now, armed with a warrant. People shouted conflicting information of the recent circumstances. "Ed or no Ed," said Jaffers. "I got to restin', and restin' I will." Mr. Hall marched up the steps, marched straight to the door of the parlor, and flung it open. "Constable," he said, "do your duty." Jaffers marched in, Hall next, Wadgers last. They saw in the dim light the headless figure facing them, with a gnawed crust of bread in one gloved hand and a chunk of cheese in the other. "That's him," said Hall. "What the devil's this?" came a tone of angry expostulation from above the collar of the figure. "You're a damned rum customer, mister," said Mr. Jaffers. "But Ed or no Ed, the warrant says body, and duty's duty. Keep off," said the figure, starting back. Abruptly, he whipped down the bread and cheese, and Mr. Hall just grasped the knife on the table in time to save it. Off came the stranger's left glove and was slapped in Jaffers' face. In another moment, Jaffers, cutting short some statement concerning a warrant, had gripped him by the handless wrist and caught his invisible throat. He got a sounding kick on the shin that made him shout, but he kept his grip. Hall sent the knife sliding along to the table to Wadgers, who acted as a goalkeeper for the offensive, so to speak, and then stepped forward as Jaffers and the stranger swayed and staggered towards him, clutching and hitting in. A chair stood in the way, and went aside with a crash as they came down together. "Get the feet," said Jaffers between his teeth. Mr. Hall, endeavoring to act on instructions, received a sounding kick in the ribs that disposed of him for a moment, and Mr. Wadgers, seeing the decapitated stranger, had rolled over and got the upper side of Jaffers, retreated towards the door, knife in hand, and so collided with Mr. Huckster and Sidderbridge Carter, coming to the rescue of law and order. At the same moment, down came 3 or 4 bottles from the chiffonier, and shot a web of pungency into the air of the room. "I'll surrender," cried the stranger, though he had Jaffers down. And in another moment he stood up panting, a strange figure, headless and handless, for he pulled off his right glove now as well as his left. "It's no good," he said, as if sobbing for breath. It was the strangest thing in the world to hear that voice coming as if out of empty space, but the Sussex peasants are perhaps the most matter-of-fact people under the sun. Jaffers got up also and produced a pair of handcuffs. Then he stared. "I say," said Jaffers, brought up short by a dim realization on the incongruity of the whole business. "Darn it! Can't use 'em as I can see." The stranger ran his arm down his waistcoat, and, as if by a miracle, the buttons to which his empty sleeve pointed became undone. Then he said something about his shin and stooped down. He seemed to be fumbling with his shoes and socks. "Why?" said Huckster, suddenly. "That's not a man at all, it's just empty clothes." Look! You can see down his collar and the linings of his clothes. I could put my arm. He extended his hand. It seemed to meet something midair, and he drew it back with a sharp exclamation. I wish you'd keep your fingers out of my eye, said the aerial voice in a tone of savage expostulation. The fact is, I'm all here. Head, hands, legs, and all the rest, but it happens I'm invisible. It's a confounded nuisance, but I am. That's no reason why I should be poked to pieces by every stupid bumpkin in Ipping, is it? The suit of clothes, now all unbuttoned and hanging loosely upon its unseen supports, stood up, arms akimbo. Several other of the men folks had now entered the room so that it was closely crowded. Invisible, eh? Said Huckster, ignoring the stranger's abuse. Whoever heard the likes of that? It's strange, but it's not a crime. Why am I assaulted by a policeman in this fashion? Ah, that's a different matter, said Jaffers. No doubt you are a bit difficult to see in this light, but I got a warrant and it's all correct. What I'm after ain't no invisibility. It's burglary. There's a house been broke into and the money took. Well, and circumstances certainly point... Stuff and nonsense, said the invisible man. I hope so, sir, but I've got my instructions. Well, said the stranger. I'll come. But no handcuffs. It's the regular thing, said Jaffers. No handcuffs, stipulated the stranger. Pardon me, said Jaffers. Abruptly, the figure sat down, and before anyone could realize what was being done, the slippers, socks, and trousers had been kicked off under the table. Then he sprang up again and flung off his coat. Here, stop that, said Jaffers, suddenly realizing what was happening. He gripped at the waistcoat. It struggled, and the shirt slipped out of it, and left it limp and empty in his hand. Hold him, said Jaffers, loudly. Once he gets the thing off. Hold him, cried everyone. And there was a rush at the fluttering white shirt which was now all that was visible of the stranger. The shirt sleeve planted a shrewd blow in Hall's face, in the face that stopped his open-armed advance, and sent him backward into old Toothsome the sexton. And in another moment the garment was lifted up and became convulsed and vacantly flapping about the arms, even as a shirt that is being thrust over a man's head. Jaffers clutched at it, and only helped to pull it off. He was struck in the mouth of the air, and incontinently threw his truncheon and smote Teddy Henfrey savagely upon the crowd of his head. Look out, said everybody, fencing at random and hitting at nothing. Hold him, shut the door. Don't let him loose. I got something. Here he is. A perfect babel of noises they made. Everybody, it seemed, was being hit all at once. And Sandy Wadgers, knowing as ever and his wits sharpened by a frightful blow in the nose, reopened the door and led the rout. The others, following incontinently, were jammed for a moment in the corner by the doorway. The hitting continued. Phipps, the Unitarian, had a front tooth broken, and Henfrey was injured in the cartilage of his ear. Jaffers was struck under the jaw, and turning, caught at something that intervened between him and Huckster in the melee, and prevented their coming together. He felt a muscular chest, and in another moment the whole mass of struggling, excited men shot out into the crowded hall. I got him, shouted Jaffers, choking and reeling through them all, and wrestling with purple face and swelling veins against his unseen enemy. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.